The sun was kissing the water of Emerald Lake like it had nothing better to do. And I, Ryan Kessler, 58 years old and freshly retired from 20 years chasing arsonists, was halfway through reeling in what looked like a decent base. Life in Willow Creek Estates was supposed to be the quiet retirement I'd earned. No more smoke-filled nightmares, just me, my dock, and the occasional splash. Then I heard it, the high-pitched whine of golf cart tires skidding across gravel like a mosquito that refused to die. I didn't even turn around. I already knew who it was. "Excuse me, sir. That activity is strictly prohibited." The voice was pure nasal venom wrapped in fake politeness. Victoria Langford, president of the Willow Creek HOA, self-appointed guardian of suburban perfection, stood at the edge of my yard in her signature pastel pink visor and a clipboard she clutched like it was the Holy Grail. Her little gold name tag glinted. Victoria Langford, HOA president. Enforcing excellence since 2018. She jabbed a manicured finger at me. Section 4.2.9 clearly states no recreational fishing without prior written approval and an official Emerald Lake access wristband. You're looking at a $200 fine, Mr. Kessler. Notice in your mailbox within 48 hours. I set the rod down slowly, tasting the absurdity. A wristband? Lady, I'm not 12 at summer camp. And last I checked, this lake isn't even yours to police. Victoria's smile never wavered, but her eyes glittered like a shark smelling chum. "Oh, but we just finalized an access agreement with the county, dear. As of this month, HOA jurisdiction applies. Rules are rules. We can't have chaos, can we?" She spun her cart in a dramatic arc, gravel flying, and zoomed off like she'd just busted the neighborhood for jaywalking. This was the third fine in 6 weeks. Last month, it was my hedge height. Exactly 36 inches, no exceptions. Before that, my mailbox color was unauthorized taupe. I didn't explode. I smiled. Because here's the thing about retired investigators. We don't get mad. We get meticulous. That night, I cracked open my laptop, poured a stiff bourbon, and dove into county records like I was chasing an arson trail. 2 hours later, I found it. The lake wasn't HOA property at all. It belonged to a dissolving family trust that had quietly listed it for auction next month. Victoria had finalized an agreement that didn't exist yet. Classic power trip bluff. My grin widened. Well, Victoria. Game on. 2 weeks later, I sat in a half-empty county auction room, raised my paddle once, and walked out the new owner of Emerald Lake for 32 grand cash. The clerk stamped the deed and said, "Congratulations, Mr. Kessler. You now control every drop." I whistled all the way home, already picturing the aluminum signs I'd ordered. The first one went up at dawn the next Saturday. Big, reflective, impossible to miss. Private property. No trespassing. Access by owner permission only. Violators reported to sheriff immediately. I hammered the last post in myself, then cracked a lemonade under my new pop-up canopy and waited. The screech came right on cue. Victoria's golf cart fishtailed up the path like a drunk suburban missile. She didn't bother parking properly, just leaped out, visor askew, and marched straight at the sign like it had personally insulted her ancestors. "What in heaven's name is this garbage?" she hissed. I flipped a page in the folder on my lap, calm as Sunday morning. "This, Victoria, is me exercising actual property rights, the kind that come with county seals, not your little board meeting fantasies." She snatched at the folder. I snapped it shut. I'd advise against touching other people's documents, especially on other people's land. Her face turned the color of cheap rose. "You can't do this. This lake is for the community." "Not anymore," I said, holding up the deed like a royal flush. "Call the county if you don't believe me. Or better yet, let's ask the sheriff." I nodded toward Deputy Morales rolling up the path exactly on time. Victoria spun, voice cracking. "Officer, this man is illegally blocking community access." Morales barely glanced at her. "Ma'am, I've seen the deed. Lake's private now. You're trespassing." The silence that followed was pure poetry. She stood there, clipboard trembling, looking like she'd swallowed a live hornet. Then she stormed off, muttering about emergency board meetings and lawsuits that would bury me. I waved cheerfully. See you at the picnic, Vic? That was just the beginning. By Tuesday, a certified letter arrived demanding my signs be removed for aesthetic violations or face $500 daily fines. I forwarded it to my old colleague Dana Morales, now a shark of a land use attorney, and told her, "Let's see how deep this rabbit hole goes." Dana laughed on the phone. "Ryan, you beautiful bastard. I'm filing an injunction and a harassment claim before lunch." The first Freedom Fish Fry happened that Friday. 18 neighbors who'd quietly hated Victoria's reign showed up with lawn chairs and coolers. Kids splashed, sausages sizzled, and for the first time in years nobody wore a ridiculous wristband. I strummed an old guitar and watched the joy spread like ripples. Victoria's anonymous flyers started appearing in mailboxes the next week, warning of catastrophic insurance cancellation and personal liability for lake-related injuries. Black humor at its finest. The woman who'd spent years terrorizing people with made-up rules was now pretending to care about safety. Dana called 2 days later. She's distributing forged legal notices through the Postal Service. That's federal mail fraud, Ryan. We're looping in the state attorney general. Then came Greg Patterson, a longtime board member who showed up at my door looking like he'd aged 10 years. "Not all of us are behind her," he said, twisting his cap. "She's been making unilateral decisions, spending funds without votes, even forging signatures on minutes. I've kept everything." We sat on my dock and went through the files. Dana's voice on speaker was pure ice. "This isn't just overreach. This is embezzlement, forgery, and wire fraud. We're going nuclear." The second party, the Freedom Fish Fry 2.0, was bigger. 76 people. Bounce house, barbecue truck, live music. Victoria showed up with some poor hired gun lawyer in a cheap suit, waving another cease and desist. This unauthorized gathering disrupts community peace. The lawyer took one look at my laminated deed, turned to her, and said, "You told me this was shared space. You lied." He handed the envelope back and walked away. The entire crowd erupted in slow, sarcastic applause. Someone even offered her a plate of ribs. She slapped it away, cheeks burning crimson, and fled. That was the moment her mask cracked for good. The Karen who'd ruled with pastel terror was now just a sad woman in a golf cart with nowhere left to hide. The HOA meeting 2 weeks later was standing room only. Normally these things drew 12 retirees and stale cookies. Tonight, almost 100 furious neighbors packed the rec center, tension crackling like static before a storm. Victoria sat at the head table, lips pressed so tight they were white, flanked by her dwindling loyalists. Greg had called the emergency session and bolded one agenda item: Motion TO remove president. I sat front row, Dana's private investigator Marcus beside me, with a leather portfolio that held pure dynamite. Greg opened the floor. Victoria tried her usual script: "We must maintain order," but the crowd shouted her down. Marcus stood calmly. 74 owners present. Quorum exceeded. Then he clicked the projector. The first slide, security footage I'd installed on my new property, showing Victoria sneaking around the boathouse 4 months ago, long before any access agreement existed. Next slide. Her and board ally Denise accepting a fat envelope from a shady surveyor under investigation for falsified easements. Marcus's voice never rose. The city clerk confirmed the access request was never approved. The version Victoria used to justify fines and spending was forged. That's felony territory: mail fraud, wire fraud, embezzlement of public funds, and systematic harassment. The room exploded. Victoria shot up. "This is a witch hunt. Smear campaign. Nobody bought it." Greg called the vote. Unanimous. She was removed on the spot. The next morning, a sheriff's cruiser sat outside her McMansion. By weeks in, the state opened a full criminal investigation. 2 board members got subpoenas. Denise was arrested after refusing to hand over financials. The raid on the HOA storage unit uncovered everything: boxes of unopened refund requests, thousands of unused wristbands, and worst of all, a hidden spreadsheet ranking residents by violation potential and leverage tactics. My name was at the top. What started as petty fishing fines had been a decade-long shakedown operation. The community breathed for the first time in years. Kids biked without fear. Veterans cleaned the shoreline without filing forms. Greg stepped up as interim president and froze every suspicious account. Refunds started rolling out. I kept the lake private, not out of spite, but because it had become the heart of something real. Spring bird-watching mornings, summer night concerts, fall canoe races, all free, all open, no clipboards allowed. One golden evening, I was replacing a dockboard when Greg wandered down with cold root beers. "You know," he said, "that lake didn't just drown her rules. It reminded us we live next to people, not regulations." I clinked my bottle to his. Took buying the water to make folks remember they own the land. And then the real storm hit. Special Agent Dorsey from the State Regulatory Office showed up at sunrise with a tablet full of nightmares. For forged documents. A fake nonprofit grant for $11,000 that vanished into thin air. Landscaping invoices from companies that didn't exist. Every signature traced back to Victoria. "You didn't just buy a lake," he told me. "You kicked over a hornet's nest of fraud." Dana and I spent hours giving statements. The sheriff's office raided again and found the mother lode, a flash drive labeled Q4 maintenance, with detailed notes on targeting residents to force sales, fence line leverage, made-up violation codes, the works. The state prosecutor moved fast. Conspiracy, embezzlement, mail fraud, criminal harassment. Victoria was cuffed in a grocery store parking lot on a quiet Thursday, staring straight ahead like a woman who finally realized the clipboard couldn't save her. Her house went dark. For sale sign went up. The old board was dissolved. An external administrator took over, and we rewrote the entire HOA charter from scratch. Public meetings only, no anonymous fines, mandatory financial transparency, and a rule banning any board use of personal surveillance without a community vote. Because nobody should feel watched in their own yard ever again. I even agreed to join the new board, not for power, but to make sure the nightmare never repeated. 20 years digging through ashes taught me one thing. The truth always surfaces when someone refuses to stay silent. The lake stayed mine, but I opened it wide. Seasonal events became tradition. Every anniversary of that first picnic, we throw what the neighborhood now calls the Real Justice Barbecue. Sausages, music, kids fishing without fear, adults laughing about the old days when one woman tried to own the water and ended up owning nothing but regret. One dusk, I stood on the dock watching the orange sky paint the lake like liquid fire. An elderly neighbor I barely knew wandered over with a plate of ribs and cornbread. "Used to think this place was cursed," he said. "Too many rules, never felt like home." I handed him a lemonade. "What changed?" He smiled, eyes on the water. "You made it ours again." He walked off to join a horseshoe game, leaving me with the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. This wasn't just revenge. It was reclamation. The HOA had slowly stolen joy through silence and fear and perfectly trimmed hedges. We took it back, one deed, one sign, one sardonic round of applause at a time. And standing there with laughter echoing across the water, I knew with bone-deep certainty, this lake was no longer theirs. It was ours. And no pastel-wearing tyrant with a clipboard would ever take it back. In the end, the real lesson here is brutally simple. Never underestimate the quiet guy with receipts. HOA Karens thrive on fear and silence. Starve them of both and watch the empire of nonsense collapse under its own ridiculous weight. Fight smart, document everything, and remember, sometimes the sweetest justice isn't yelling louder. It's buying the whole damn lake and handing out free ribs while they drive away in shame.